Well guys, it's been a minute since I made the last video. Got some good news and bad news. The good news is that I got a whole lot of new parts for my different airsoft guns. The bad news is well, you know, the P-Boys build, my DSG M4 I was supposed to be making a video on. Yeah, I kind of got a little bit excited. Cranked that out in one night and didn't film a single thing about it. So I can't really show you the build process on that, but I will be able to show you guys the finished product. Instead, I'm going to do my second DSG build, and that is on this gun that you see right here today, a brand new Echo 1 XCR-C. Now, this is actually a gun I've been wanting for quite some time now. Pretty much, I always liked the look of it. You know, it's a little bit different from a normal M4, however, it takes all the basic M4 parts. This is pretty much the perfect non-M4 M4 you can buy on the market right now. It has traces of a little bit of a Scar H, a little bit of traces of a Masada in there, but still on its own, it's pretty unique, and the overall look of it is pretty nice. I'll go ahead and throw in a picture where I can get the whole view of the gun right here. But what I really like about this is that the Echo 1 XCR, the polymer version at least, is pretty much a carbon copy of a M4 platform on the inside. Same version 2 gearbox, same trigger, same selector switch, same pistol grip, motor configuration, hop up, barrels. So like the entire gun is pretty much an M4 on the inside, which means that all your standard M4 parts are going to fit in here. And this is kind of my redemption build to the original P-Boys. If you guys remember, I originally put in an EFCS gearbox in there. Let me see if I can find the gearbox real quick. Yeah, so this is pretty much all that I have left of that old airsoft gun. You can build. You can see the gearbox is pretty mangled. I could still use this, but I wanted to start fresh because this thing, it had so much potential, but I just, you know, ever since I messed up with the spring guide the first time, it never really worked right since then. So I went ahead and got myself a new one. This is a brand new EFCS drop-in gearbox, and we're gonna make it work. This guy right here, and pretty much do the DSG the right way the first time I should have done with the P-Boys, but in a new platform. So the first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of a review of the gun. This is a pretty old gun. It came out, I think, originally like 2011, 2012. So it's been on the market for quite some time. I can't say whether or not this is an older version or a newer version, but I would imagine this is the latest rendition, or at least one of, considering that this gun was out of stock for, I would say, the last quarter of 2019, first quarter of 2020, and then it recently came in stock beginning of second quarter 2020, at least on EVIX. So I'd imagine that this is the latest batch that Echo 1 has gotten. TLDR, this is pretty much a JGM4, Echo 1, JG, Golden Eagle. They all use the same internal parts. So expect this to have a 8mm or 7mm. I would imagine it's an 8mm because Echo 1 actually does rebrand their gearboxes unless they stop doing that. 8mm version 2 gearbox in here. You can kind of see on the inside there. It said it had a metal hop-up chamber on the website. That's clearly a plastic hop-up chamber, as you can see in there. So I guess they got that wrong. However, I do see that there's a Mad Bull blue bucking in there, which is nice to see. I remember the Echo 1s originally came with Mad Bull orange buckings when these type of guns were still fairly new on the market. So I guess that's a difference there that you can see. Not sure if this little, you know, trigger finger resting position thing was on the original ones. Externals, it's full plastic, and I mean full plastic. The receiver, upper, lower, stock, plastic flash hider on the end. I'm not sure you can see that, but orange tip, doesn't come with a metal tip out of the box. I think a lot of guns are doing that. What's this? Bolt, mock bolt, plastic. Charging handle on the side feels like metal, but it could be just, yeah, I'm pretty sure this charging handle assembly is metal. Internals are probably made of plastic. This gas tube on the top, well, that actually feels like metal. This little gas block, I believe, is plastic. Barrel's metal. Plastic, oh, actually has a plastic trigger guard as well. So they cut corners here. Plastic stock adapter, buffer tube is metal. So I guess we can say whatever needs to be metal on these kind of guns is metal, which is nice to see. I think the selector switch is actually, or mag release is plastic too. So they definitely cut corners to keep this gun under $200, or right at $200, I should say. You do get full Robinson Armaments licensing. I don't know if you guys can see that right there. And on the other side, so I guess that's a cool feature, although I'm not really sure who's trying to flex their Robinson Armaments licensing when it's selector switch feels, you know, very clicky, but it isn't really the firmest. It does click into place, which is nice, but that's what every new airsoft gun does. Sling adapter on the back is plastic. Don't really care for that. Two-piece style buffer tube, so you can see the castle nut actually does spin on this, which is a nice feature. It's shipped with this giant 9.6 battery. I'm charging it right now, but it's a 1500 milliamp hour 9.6 volt. Use some thick cells. I haven't seen a 9.6 with this thick of cells. So rest assured, if you wanted any sort of like, let me see if I can pull out another LiPo. This is a 2200 milliamp hour zippy compact. You can see like the width is almost the same on those two. So any sort of, you know, Titan Power, LiPo battery, nunchuck style is probably going to be able to fit in this stock out of the box. So fitting big LiPos in there is nice. Internals, you know, basic version 2 gearbox, metal. I guess I'm going to be tearing it apart so I can show you what the gearbox looks like. I do want to get a firing test on this out of the box. I'm not going to, I'll chrono it, but not really show it on camera. I mean, you guys know what to expect from these type of guns. I'd imagine it has a 603 inner barrel. Yeah, the crowning on there is okay, not the greatest. Just a brass inner barrel, probably 605, maybe 603. I need to measure with my calipers. Pros on why I like this is an M4, but not an M4. So any sort of basic M4 parts you can throw in. You can throw in a Retro Arms gearbox if you want to. Titan, gate Titan in here. You can throw it in the stock gearbox if you really wanted to. But any sort of thing's going to fit. Hopefully the EFCS fits, but because if it can fit that, it can pretty much fit any sort of M4 upgrade on the market. Another benefit over other cheap guns, polymer guns, is that the rail system is completely integrated into the upper receiver. You might say, why is that important? Well, that means that you're not going to have any barrel wobble. You can flex it from side to side a little bit, but I mean, compared, it's actually kind of bad. That's more so the receiver flexing on the lower receiver. But as far as, you know, you getting inaccurate shots from your hop up because your barrel just keeps getting loose on you, it's not going to happen. So I guess that's a pro. But if you do flex it or try to flex the upper receiver, it's going to flex because it's plastic. You have a full underupper rail on the top, which is nice if you want to mount different optics, different sights, and keep a good sight picture. You can mount anything anywhere. Plenty of rails on each side. They are plastic. I haven't tried mounting anything to it just yet. Where's the it came with the stubby grip. Yeah, the stubby grip right here. I don't know if I'll use it. I might use it on a different gun. But this is definitely a lot cheaper than the Aim Sports stubby grip that basically looks the exact same. This is a much cheaper feeling plastic. So they're not the same. It comes with 2 high caps, which is nice. 2 winding wheels, which is a nice feature. Cleaning and jamming rod. Big nickel metal hydride battery. Like, this thing's chunky. So you could probably use this. Yeah, so let's go ahead and I'll chrono it, report back on that, and then we'll just hop right into the build. Okay, side note, this stock, I don't hate it because it does have a little QD mount point that's made of metal. Looks to be in fairly decent condition, so I wouldn't mind using this stock. But when I tell you it was a pain to get this off for the first time, this butt plate, it locked on there. I had to get I don't even want to put it back on. I had to get a flathead to pry it off with. So doing it by hand, you're gonna have to wait for that to break in. But as you can see before, you can see how wide the battery storage is on this gun. Battery fits in there fine. Quick shooting test. Semi. This is on the stock nickel metal hydride. Charge it for maybe 10 minutes, not full. So that sounds like 12, 13 rounds a second. Which isn't bad. It's probably, I think I chronoed it on 11.1. It shoots a lot snappier, as you'd expect, but only around 18. I'd say 17 or 18 rounds a second on that one. Sounds kind of windy, so trimming isn't perfect. Definitely wouldn't use an 11.1 LiPo on this stock, unless you wanted to break something really quickly. But yeah, that's pretty much the gun. Chronoed around, 360 FPS. So good for outdoors, some indoor fields, right in the middle. I like guns that chrono around 350, 360 FPS. In all honesty, that's where I build most of my guns to shoot around that range. So, you know, if you want to take this to a CQB field, let the spring break in, it probably should a little under 350 at the end of that. But yeah, I think this is a pretty decent gun, especially for the price. Now, I wouldn't pay 200 bucks for this because there's so much better you can do for 200 bucks unless you really wanted something custom like this, which I did. I got this one for around $169 on eVic on sale. You're probably going to be able to find these things on sale. If it's not on sale in one of the big retailers, it'll be on sale in one of the other ones. Used, you know, this is an $80, $90 gun if you want to go buy used. I personally wouldn't. I don't think it's really worth it. But yeah, that's my review. I'm not really going to show shooting because I'm going to leave the hop-up system completely stock on this gun. I'm only going to change around the gearbox. It's a Mad Bull blue bucking with a stock brass inner barrel. The hop-up. Actually, the hop-up wheel feels pretty tight. I wasn't expecting it to be this tight, but this thing is super tight. So I don't want to take it apart because I know as soon as you take apart these plastic wheel type hop-ups, they get loose on you and never return back to where they were out of the box. So I'm just going to leave the entire barrel system stock, and then I'll do a shooting test later when the whole gun's done. And then I'll pretty much translate to what it is out of the box. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into the parts that we're going to be throwing in here. So you guys saw before, EFCS, this is going in there. So this is a really nice system for 90 bucks. This is the short rear wired ones. The long rear wired ones got boosted in price to $98. In all honesty, it isn't that big of a deal. $8 isn't that huge of a deal. Still under the $100 price point, and for that, it's still very much worth it. I think I paid around $100 for my first one. But so this is $10 cheaper from the last year, from the couple years back when I bought that first gearbox. But yeah, this is the mid rear wired one, which is the cheapest on eVic. On top of that, I found this on eBay. It is a JG Blue motor with pretty weak neomagnets in here. Now, it feels like a ferrous magnet motor, but these look like they're around the same type of magnets you find in a Crytek 30K. The armature shimmed okay, spins nicely, but I did hook this up directly to a LiPo, and it does spin up pretty quickly. And for this build, I don't really want to have that powerful of a motor in here. I tried throwing a really powerful neomagnet motor on my other guns, and it really worked best with the 30K when I saw the EFCS and the P-Boys. So I'm going to stick with this motor. 25 bucks actually, and the guy has like a bunch of these. I debated buying another one. Didn't know if it would be the actual JG Blue, but this is a JG Blue with the weaker magnets. Not really sure what to call it, but it's basically a JG Blue. You can, you know. Internal wise, it's basically like all the other parts from the EFCS. So still have the SHS 8-tooth double sector gear, and the SHS 18-to-1 step gear. This one's been worn out. You can see the paint's pretty much almost all the way removed, but the teeth are still really good condition. Very good. I got a really good set of 18-to-1s when I bought that. However, I wanted to keep the rate of fire down a little bit because the other one was really high. And caused a lot of problems with the EFCS, like overspin. So, to lower the ratio, I got a 9-tooth ZCI bevel gear. So the 9-tooth bevel gear lowers your, I think it's around 15% slower rate of fire. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. M150 spring my SHS, and then an FPS soft air piston. This zero shock piston, this is by far the best piston on the market. It has the second tooth removed, but also the third tooth is also already comes from the factory, shorter than the rest of the teeth to the perfect height. Super lightweight. It's already glued in place. Like I can't remove the rack from the body of the piston. It's a little bit lighter than the SHS piston, even after you lighten it. Like this is a very good piston, and the best part is you can find it for like under $10 on power6.com. I also got this Big Dragon pistol grip. This is an umbrella style grip, so pretty much the exact same style as an umbrella grip for 21 bucks. This was $6 on Power 6 without the umbrella branding, which is fine. So I'm gonna have a kind of a two-tone look. This is, I guess, gonna be more so fit in phase 2 of the build because I am going to change around the externals a little bit. Most of the stock, flash hider, different grip. In the future, after I get the phase 1 of the internals finished up. And I think that's pretty much it. So I guess now we just need to take it apart and look at what the stock gearbox looks like and start working on the new gearbox. So I just wanted to get this on camera real quick. 6.04 millimeters. You gotta kind of finagle it. I had lost it, but yeah, it's around 6.04. It's just 6. I'd say it showed me 6.03 once showed me 6.05 another time, but yeah, 6.04 inner barrel. So it is a tight bore, I guess you can consider it. Hop-up system looks pretty nice, actually. Comes with this beefy spring. That's a really nice feature. Keeps air seal, a really tight hop-up wheel. It's going to hold position, so this is a very good system. Feeding lips look to be straight for the most part. You might, I mean, you know, this is what you kind of get with a plastic hop-up. It's about I'd say 240 millimeter outer barrel, or inner barrel, I should say, but yeah. Stock hop-up. The cool thing I saw is the the bolt is this entire metal piece on the inside. So very small spring on the side that uses to collapse it, but it is pretty stiff, and it clanks forward when you release it. So very nice charging handle system. This isn't something that's just gonna break very easily. And I'd imagine it also gives a little bit of rigidity to the upper receiver, which is nice. So good design on the upper. I really do like this, the way they did this. So this thing just gets more and more interesting the deeper I get into it. I haven't even taken the gearbox out, and I was looking at the spring guide. I'm like, is this a ball bearing spring guide? I looked at the back, and Lord and behold, this is a quick chain spring system. I'm not sure if you can see that on camera the best, but this is a quick chain spring system. So very, very nice to see from JG. Oh, that might be a full steel tooth piston. It's red, so it's not the same orange. It's the red from the JG full steel tooth piston. So this could actually be a lipo ready out of the box, in all honesty. I mean, after you tune it and shim it, but this is looks like it's a pretty decent gearbox. Reinforced on the front end right there, on the bottom at least. Looks like they attempted to radius it, but probably gonna have to go back up with that hand. No additional reinforcements on the top. Air nozzle looks to be basic. Torque screws, which is what I really like about these JG gearboxes. But yeah, this is starting to impress me. This is definitely nice to see. I mean, you don't really see reviews of this gun recently, and it's nice to see that they do have a quick chain spring system. So this definitely is a newer rendition of the XCR. So the plot thickens, guys. This might be the exact same motor that I just bought, or at least very similar. Looking at the magnets on the inside, like you can see, just the tint on them. I think those are Ferris magnets. But the can looks really nice. Older guns, like they just take stock Charlies and throw them in there. They look all beat up and mangled. This one looks pretty decent. If you can see the winding on the inside, it's okay. 18 rounds a second on an 11.1. I'm pretty sure with some shimming, some fine tuning of the gearbox, we probably could reach 20 on this stock motor. And 20 rounds a second on 11.1 is pretty decent. So the mode, like a MOSFET and tuning, stock gearbox, I'm pretty sure like you could tune this. Heck, throw a lighter weight spring in there, bring it down to 330, you have a 21 at rate of fire gun, stock internals. So very tunable. But yeah, this is a pretty decent motor. So far, guys, a lot that I like about this gun. One of the things I don't is that Allen screw right here for the mag release. I personally don't really care for Allen screws, especially when they're this small on cheap stuff like this, because they strip out ridiculously easy if you use the wrong size. So just to make sure you have yourself like a good screwdriver set and are able to find the exact right size and apply good pressure down to it when you're pulling it out, because the last thing you want to do is to strip this screw. It's very easy just to undersize the Allen key. And like I said, they strip out really easily. It'd be nice to see if they use like either a standard Phillips head, a really small Phillips head, or preferably a Torx screw, and then it would be a lot nicer. But yeah, one thing I don't really care for. But everything else is so far so good. Alright guys, moment of truth. Yeah boy, that is a quick chain spring guide in a JG gearbox. Man, that's really nice to see. Full bearings. These bearings look to be in fairly decent condition. Obviously not going to use this gearbox, so I'm just going to take it apart real quick, show you the internals, throw it right back together. Not going to do any tuning or anything, just going to throw my parts bin because I really like this gearbox, and I'm pretty sure that's a steel piston, but we'll have to dig deeper to find out. Before I get into the gearbox, one thing I don't really care for is the size of the Allen key that is required to take out the spring guide. It is massive. I had, like, the largest Allen key I had was still undersized. It locked in just barely to be able to turn it. And I think that's mostly because it was under not that much tension from the spring. So that's pretty nice to see, I guess. But again, if you had like a really powerful spring in there, this thing's like locked in place. This thing is not going to come out easily. You need to get yourself a proper size Allen key which not everyone has access to. So I personally, if you would have downsized, this is an Aries Aries spring guide from EFCS. They're pretty much identical. I'm pretty sure this would lock into the back of this gearbox over here, but same design, same basic design. Even this Dream Army ball bearing spring guide would probably lock it in the back of the other one. But anyway, one thing I don't really care for. Another thing is that to get the FPS down to 360, they just cut the end of the spring off, which is the cheap way of going about things. This was a short spring. It's like an M120, but when you have this and you cut that many rungs off, you know, you're lowering it from 400 down to 360. It kind of cheaping out, honestly. They probably throw in the heavier spring in the XCR-L versus the XCR-C, but yeah, that's honestly a cop out in my opinion. Get a proper size spring, because when you cut it like this, it's bound to snap again. I've snapped quite a few springs by, you know, because they're cheap and I cut them off. So don't do that. I don't really care for this, but you know, it is what it is. Okay guys, got the gearbox opened up. Have some mixed feelings about this. I like that they got rid of all this extra reinforcing around the back side so you can fit proper size gear sets in here. Nice to see that. Decent amount of grease. You know, they used to just slather everything with grease. This one, you know, looks like they were pretty modest with it. The gears are lightly coated, but they're coated where they need to be coated, and it's pretty decent grease actually. You know, they grease these gearboxes not necessarily with the best lubrication, but they grease with lubrication that's going to last the shelf life of not, you know, moving around that much. So I guess it's pretty good. My favorite part is, yes sir, we have ourselves a full steel tooth piston, a JG full steel tooth piston. This is the same piston that I had in my original stock gun, my first AEG ever. Second tooth is not removed, third tooth is not removed either, so that's something you're gonna have to do on your own if you're adjusting engagement. That's going to greatly increase the performance of this gun as far as how it sounds. Slides pretty decently on the rails, but it could use a little bit of sanding on the rails and polishing of the rails to allow us to slide a little bit freer, but pretty decent. Gear set, you know, standard JG gear set, has the built-in layer chip, nice touch. It actually looks like they trimmed down this selector, so that's interesting. Has this gun been returned? Like, the cut spring, the cut selector switch, like, I mean, Echo One's doing some little things here and there that just surprised me. I mean, that's a common thing for tech tube beforehand, but a shortened selector, or tap and play, I'm sorry, tap and play on the box is kind of interesting. I've never seen that before. Trigger contacts, you can see I threw a LiPo on there. You can already see they're starting to burn out. So a MOSFET is pretty much a requirement on this airsoft gun. As far as shimming, there were shims on the bevel and the step gear. There were no shims on the top of the sector gear. Don't really care for that. It means that they just kind of threw shims at where they wanted it to meet their specifications. Bearings are 8mm, but you know, they don't lock in the best. You can push them out very easily. This one's kind of locked in, not really coming out. That one's locked in. So you can tell the casting on this one isn't the greatest. This is definitely a gearbox you want to glue the bearings into if you keep using it, because the actual machining of it to fit super tightly on the bushings, excuse me, isn't that great. So you're going to want to lock these down with some bearing, Loctite, or super glue, whatever you want to use, epoxy. I was mistaken. There is no radiusing on the front of the gearbox. I don't know. I wouldn't even call it an attempt. So do radius this properly if you're going to use this. But yeah. Alright, you can see stock components. If you're testing air seal, guys, you want to make sure that you put your nozzle in this position to simulate it being in the most forward position. You know, nozzle doesn't really lock in until you really force it forward. That's mostly due to that air nozzle, but the air nozzle is properly sized for that cylinder head. And when you have that, I mean, you don't necessarily need an O-ring air nozzle, but that is a very good air seal, considering there's no O-ring on the air nozzle. Take it off, is even better. No leaks around the sides. It looks like they put some sort of tape on the, some sort of like tape on the side, some type of, I don't know if it's that silicone sealant or something, gasket maker, but yeah, this cylinder head is locked in place. Now, again, this is a type of system where it's great out of the box. As soon as you remove that cylinder head, you're not getting your compression back. So yeah, definitely leave this alone if you're, you know, not planning on replacing it or have the tools. Inside of the, you know, has a you know, decent air pad or pad on the back of the cylinder. Sticks out a little bit. I guess it's to adjust angle engagement slightly. I tested angle of engagement. It's about at the 1 o'clock position, so not perfect, but you know, for a stock gun, you know, you're not gonna be able to do much better than that. Yeah, it's about at the 1 o'clock position. So overall, final thoughts of this: a very good gearbox compared to what it was in the past. I've seen internal reviews of the XCR beforehand, and this is miles ahead of it. Full tooth piston, motor's in much better condition, gear set looks really good. Shimming, I guess, has gotten better. They put shim on 2 of the gears instead of none of the gears now, so that's an improvement. But you know, the trigger contacts kind of weak. 18 gauge wiring. It's still a fairly cheap metal. If you don't radius the front and you throw like a high powered spring, you're probably going to fracture it. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this gearbox. And you can do a pretty decent balance build. I would use the stock spring or stock AG springs in here. Just keep it at the same FPS. Maybe do some Airsoft components to bring it up, but stock spring, change it around the gear set, and you'll be cooking with some pretty good performance. So I'm gonna throw this back together and let's go ahead and get into the build. Alright, first thing, good amount of grease. I really like the grease they use in here. Feels really nice. I've shot this gearbox, or my previous gearbox stock. It's really smooth. You have shims on all the gears. Looks like they only put 1 shim on each one, but I guess the tolerances are okay. I mean, it sounds pretty good, but I would be fully confident using this gearbox completely stock without taking it apart ever in a gun, and it'd probably be 100% fine. Testing air seal real quick. Nowhere close to as good as what it was on the Echo 1, so air nozzle leaves a lot to be desired. Pop this out actually. Yeah, air seal's okay. Nowhere near as good as it was on the Echo 1 gearbox out of the box. So oversized air nozzle. They probably did it so it can move a little bit faster, but you know, it is what it is. This is a steel piston. Really like the piston head on here. Really nice. Full steel teeth. Second to last tooth is cut down, which is nice to see. No bearings in the back, but you know, that's in the name of lightweight. That's always good. Micro switch, pretty decent. If you get one of these gearboxes, keep this spring. You can buy them overseas, but they're hard to find. And spending $10 for a little spring like that is not worth it. The little things are good on this gearbox too. So spring on the anti-reversal latch, really strong. Spring for the tablet plate, super strong and actually undersized compared to normal ones. So for DSGs, this is a very good spring. I actually have the same spring in my P-Boys for my other gun. Gear set has a delayer. This is your standard. I would compare these to like a SHS powdered steel gear. They look pretty much identical to those. Aries probably has their own, you know, steel gear set that they get them from, but these look like ZCI, the $5 ZCI gear set you would get. I'm pretty sure they are that. And they work. They work pretty well. They're good for around 25 rounds a second, maybe 30 in some cases, but anything higher than 30 rounds a second, you're probably going to strip them. But sector gears are good, and it's just a good gear set overall. So, I think that's good enough a review of this. Let's go ahead and start modifying it. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is actually tear apart everything, clean it off, and you know, clean all the parts, and then radius the shell. So let's do that. Okay, so I got the gearbox stripped down to its 2 shells. Just going to clean this thing real quick though. There's a gasket on the back of the EFCS in between the gearbox and the PCB itself. Keep that gasket. You don't want this thing to short out on you. These things work really well, but they aren't the strongest. I'm just going to be honest with you. So keep that gasket, prevent any shortages with the gearbox, and you're smooth sailing from there. Okay, gearbox is cleaned. I'm a little bit disappointed in the paint job, just with a little bit of Kaboom degreaser, hot water, and a toothbrush. Like, the paint's already starting to come off on the inside of this gearbox. So you get these little quality control issue things that come up. This side stayed pretty decent, so I guess it's just not enough paint applied there. But yeah, cleaned up really nicely. You can see a little bit of, that looks like surface rust right there. I'm not sure what that is. I'm pretty sure it's some sort of surface rust on that bushing. Should be fine, because, you know, we're going to put shims over top of that. But yeah, next thing we got to do is radius the gearbox. I'm not sure if I'm going to polish it. I think I'm going to leave it stock for now. Actually, I will go ahead and polish the rails and stuff, just to make sure this thing's performing at top-notch level. but I will be using the stock bushings and bearings in the same position they're in because they're locked in really nice, flush. Yeah, very good stuff. Alright guys, gearbox's radius looks pretty decent. I didn't radius it too much, but just enough to get the job done. Kind of nicked it at the bottom here. But we should be fine. You know, I ran this gearbox without any radiusing for quite some time on a much heavier spring than we're going to put in now. And it did pretty good. So these are strong gearboxes. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. Next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to, unfortunately, take off this piston head, because what a lot of people don't tell you is, or Aries doesn't tell you, is that there's no pad on the back. There's a little ring. This one's actually a little bit better than my last one. There's a little bit of a ring right there, a little rubber O-ring on the outside, but the rest is just plastic, so the gun's going to sound very clanky when you first get it. So we're just going to glue a faucet washer on the end of here to adjust angle engagement. I just wanted to show you guys perfect angle of engagement. We have the FPS soft air zero shock piston. Third tooth is already cut down, so there's no engagement whatsoever. It's just free floating. This is all the way forward. I put a little faucet washer on the end of here, so we're getting perfect angle of engagement. This is super easy. These pistons make it super simple to get perfect angle engagement the first time. So yeah. All we gotta do now is I'm gonna put a little bit of gasket maker on the cylinder head after the super glue dries, and then I'm going to set apart the compressor components, start shimming the gears. Let's keep it moving. In case you guys are wondering, I use Permatex Blue RTV silicone gasket maker. This is really good, keeps a good air seal. Dries almost like a rubber. I know some of the Permatex or some gasket makers dry almost like a concrete. Don't want to use that. The blue type is the kind you need. If you do need to remove the cylinder head, I mean, it's stuck in there, but you can force it out and just redo the gasket. It cleans up really nicely. Very good stuff. Alright, the gears are 100% shimmed. One trick I use, I have this Super Lube synthetic grease that I use for all my gear sets with a mixture of some liquid bearings, but I usually put the grease on the axles to keep the shims in place when I'm not using them. So you just put a little bit on your finger and then just slather it over the axles. That way the shims stay in place. You don't have to worry about, you can knock your gears around a little bit if you accidentally touch them, and the shims will stay on there. So you can set them aside just like that and they're not going to come off. So from this point forward, this has been drying. The RTV on the cylinder head has been drying since I started shimming the gearbox. So this is completely dry. Should be good to go. At this point, I just put the MOSFET back in, and then from there, I guess the next thing would be to throw in the internals and see if it shoots. I don't really know what else I'm going to be doing to this gun. Very basic setup. I might try to find a different air nozzle. It's air nozzle, I mean. I'm going to measure this one, see how long it is with my calipers, and see if I have another one that seals a little bit better than this. Other than that, yeah, we're going to pretty much run the home stretch. Alright, this setup is a little bit ghetto. I have the gun, because I didn't want to rewire it just yet. It goes to Tamiya, a Tamiya to Dean's connector down there. Then it's running through the Dean's to XT60 connector from my G3. That's waiting on a MOSFET. But it works. I just have the motor in here with the gear set, and you can hear the gear set sounds buttery smooth. I'm happy with it. I could get a little bit smoother probably if I really fine-tune the shimming on the bevel gear, but this should be, it sounds really good where it's at right now. Oh. So I'm going to go ahead and go and finish this build. Alright guys, this is the final look of the gearbox. Got all the parts installed, gear shimmed, everything lubricated. Well, I still need to put some grease on some of these gears, but for the most part everything's ready to go. I did switch out to the stock nozzle that came on the original gearbox through the other nozzle that came in the EFCS into the old Echo 1, so we should get proper fitment like it was intended out of the box, and it has a lot better air seal on this one as well, even though it doesn't have an O-ring. So yeah, let's go ahead, grease these gears up, close the gearbox with a spring in the back, and test fire this bad boy. Okay, so stock gearbox. In all honesty, it's pretty decent. Quick chain spring guide is a nice feature. 8mm bearings look a lot better than what they used to. actual ball bearings instead of roller bearings. Full steel tooth piston, pretty good air nozzle out of the box, good air seal. I don't have much complaints with the stock gearbox. However, what we've just built is, oh my goodness, so much nicer. Got the gearbox back together, M150 spring installed. My long cable. I'm gonna have to rewire it, but I took it out of one of my AKs. So let's go ahead and grab a battery real quick. This is a 7.4 volt, 20C, 2200 milliamp hour LiPo battery. So let's plug this guy in. Alright, so safe, works. Move it back to for semi. You can see there's a little bit of a pre-cock there for with the 7.4 LiPo. Full auto. So with the 7.4, you can obviously see that it's more so for a semi-auto trigger response. That trigger response is nasty, in all honesty. But now this is the fun part. Got the 11.1 20C, or 25C, excuse me, 2200 milliamp hour, still zippy compact. Plug that in right there. Now this one is not going to have the pre-cocking. So you can see here, it's a full cycle now. But in full auto. So you can see the air seal is pretty good and move that external part from the gun. But yeah, that's at least around the 30s. I would say 29, maybe 30 rounds a second. I'm happy with it. I'm gonna put chrono it, but yeah, the gearbox is done. Sounds really smooth. So now all I got to do is rewire it for a Dean's connector, make another one of these cattails for this specific gun, and that should be it. So I'll go and rewire it, get into the gearbox, get the gearbox into the gun, and we'll show you the final shooting test and all that good stuff. Okay, so as you can see, I got it into the receiver. Everything lines up really nicely. A couple things with these EFCSs is that the selectors are pretty stiff in anything that's not an Aries. So it's actually in safe mode right here. It doesn't want to move any further forward. You can kind of force it into that clicked position. You can go back and kind of sand the front end of the selector plate. Not really necessary. It's going to break in over time. And it does work really nicely. I have other selectors, so if I do break it, it's not that huge of a deal. But yeah, I just left the selector alone, and you just have to kind of force it into place, and you should be good. Now, if you do have a metal selector, because this is plastic, you might have a few more issues. But since there's a little more play in this specific receiver, I'm just going to let it break in over time. The umbrella, or the, excuse me, the, what band is this? Big Dragon umbrella replica grip is in gray, really nice fit, even on this XCR receiver. The beaver tail doesn't really fit up that nicely, there's a little bit of a gap in the back, but, you know, it is what it is. For wiring, you are going to have a spade connector. I just cut off the stock ones off the stock wiring, off the stock gearbox, rewired it to the EFCS. It's the same gauge wire, and then I also used the exact same extension. Took the Tamiya off and put an XT60 connector on the end. And this allows you to actually get it through the hole back here in this metal plate that attaches the stock on the rear. Other fitment issues, you are going to have to sand the bottom of the trigger, where the trigger goes through in the receiver. If you have the straight trigger like I do, I'm not sure about the standard trigger, but I think the standard trigger that comes in the gearbox, or in the gearbox should work better. But since this is a blade trigger and kind of thicker on the rear, it doesn't fit as nicely. Selector. The selector is a little bit off. You are going to have to go in and re-drill the selector hole on the gearbox to be able to get this selector to fit, or else it's going to lock in place. Takes like, I don't know, a minute to re-drill it. Very easy to do, get the right size bit. I don't know off the top of my head, but you can find the right size bit if you have a drill set. Drill it out, make sure it's not too big for the spring, but big enough to where the mag catch can line properly with the receiver, so your mag's going in and out. And quick test of mag fitment. This is King Arms mid cap. Locks in. For play, that's more on the mid cap side. Locks in perfectly and works really well. So as you can see, there's that. I already did a shooting test. Still works. Works great. So let's go ahead and put the gearbox back together. Throw in the hop-up system, the upper receiver. and chrono this thing, see what it shoots like. So guys, that's pretty much going to do it for the, don't even know what to call this, XCR build. As you can see, I have it kind of tricked out for the time being. AMAG, T1 style sight on the top, stubby grip it came with, and the umbrella grip, or big dragon grip. Things I'm going to change out, again, the stock is going to change. I have some cool ideas for that, so you can see that in the future. New vertical grip, angle 4 grip, something like that, and a new flash hider. And then pretty much the gun is done. I really, again, like the way this gun looks out of the box. The XCR is a very nice looking platform. It is full plastic, but again, I think I did a pretty decent job with this. Very good performance. You have the blade trigger in there. The EFCS is just purring like a kitten. This is made for 2-cell lipos, so I'm primarily going to use this in semi-automatic. As you saw, it shoots around 18 rounds a second on a 7.4, which is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. On an 11.1 lipo, it gets around the 30 round per second mark, 29 to 30 rounds per second, and that's all on that JG weak ferrous or neomagnet motor. Still very good trigger response, pre-cocking on a 2-cell, normal firing with a high rate of fire on a 3-cell lipo. It's just a good airsoft gun. Now this is pretty much what the P-Boy should have been the first time, but I kind of I didn't know exactly what I was doing. But this build, took me, I would say, the better part of 6 hours to complete, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah.